Now, tensions between China and the US were already running high after the Dalai Lama's visit to the White House. But now the Obama administration is considering taking Chinese censorship of Google to the World Trade Organization. What's going on? Well, to iron all this out for us, I'm joined now by the Financial Times' Ben McLannahan, as the world's most read business column hits Bloomberg. Good morning, Ben. Thanks very much for joining us. So, Ben, tell us what's going on here, then.
Yes, it does seem to be, as you suggest, it's a dangerous escalation of this conflict, which began in quite extraordinary fashion 7 or 8 weeks ago, when Google took the extraordinary step of posting a private complaint in the most public way imaginable. And now it appears to be escalating it to the WTO, which would be consistent at least, because when it signed up to launch a Chinese compliant website back in 2006, it made clear to US authorities at the time that it was doing so under duress and that it expected censorship to move into the middle of bilateral and multilateral trade negotiations. But now it appears, that they've crossed another step.
It begs the question, Ben, doesn't it, whether this is actually a trade issue or a freedom of information issue?
Well, that's exactly right. I've talked to a couple of lawyers in this, and they really can't see the case that Google might present to an organization like the WTO, which is supposed to rule on bilateral trade and commerce. This is a censorship issue, and last year, in fact, China lost a mammoth 3-year complaint that the US had on copyright, in which the WTO said it had no jurisdiction over censorship and didn't want to get involved, and the US appeared willing to accept that.
Looking back over appeals to the WTO, it's a lengthy process, isn't it? And often the end result isn't what you want or what you'd hoped.
That's right. The rubric says between 12 to 18 months from lodging an action to some kind of verdict, and it's never that short. It's normally 2.5 years, 3 years plus. And at the end of that, of course, there's no obligation on signatories to the WTO to actually do anything. There's no punitive powers that the WTO has, and so China, for example, having lost this landmark verdict on copyright, hasn't changed anything. It's just up to other signatories to impose reciprocal sanctions if they want to.
How's all this debacle with China been affecting Google and, Google, the company itself?
Well, the most obvious pair strategy, the most obvious trading strategy since Google made that astonishing blog posting back on January the 12th has been to sell Google and buy Baidu, which is the #1 by some distance. And that's worked. Google's down about 9% and Baidu's up about 36%. And the background to this is that the market share figures that Google was putting up were actually okay. But now that there's this enormous question mark over its future in China, media planners, people booking 6 months, 1 year in advance, may well decide not to book with Google in the first quarter.
Ben, thanks for joining us today. Ben McLannahan there, speaking to us at the FT.